Hello, beautiful people. I'm Mariquita Solis, and I'm excited to be here today. We've got a great guest, David Benzaquen, who is here, and he's going to be talking to us about Mission Plant. So, thank you for joining everybody that's watching on the replay. Please give StreamYard permission to use your name in the comments because we want to definitely hear what you're thinking. If you have questions, we want to be able to answer them. And um, afterwards, if you're watching replay again, please post the comments and questions because we'll be going back and checking them because we want everybody to gain and insight from this great man, David, who's got a lot of wisdom on his journey from being, well, let's just say an unsettled vegan now to a to a to the good vegan, right? Living the good life, thriving as a vegan in peace. So he's here to share his wisdom. So welcome, David. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here. So I've been vegan for 20 years, and I got to this movement, this heart, this passion, because as a young person, I was always very concerned about social justice issues of all kinds, and I was always thinking about how I could have the greatest impact. And through the music scene, the punk scene, and through other things, I came to learn about animal protection issues. And when I went to college, I went to the student organizations fair during the orientation week before school started. And I decided I wanted to get really active in different social causes. And so I went to all the different advocacy clubs tables to speak to the organizers and to find out what they would do in their clubs. And at each club, I learned about the important work they were doing, anti-death penalty club, anti-war club. And while I really appreciated the efforts they were making, I was a little concerned that the activities they were involved in were not necessarily going to be that impactful because they were saying things like, it was 2002 and George Bush was president, and they were saying things like, we're going to protest the war and try to get the president to stop it, or we're going to write letters to President Bush to tell him to stay executions. And I was like, I don't know how likely we are to achieve those things. But then I went to speak to the people at the American University Animal Rights Effort Club and spoke to two young women, Laura Sanders and Tara Nikotra, who were the presidents of the club. And they asked me if I was vegan. And I said I wasn't. And they said, we're going to help you go vegan, and you're going to save 100 lives every single year of your life. And then every single person you help move in that direction is going to be exponentially greater impact on your health, on animals, and the environment. I never considered that I could have such an amazing impact and be so empowered to make such a change in the world just by my own choices. And so it really set me down a path.
Wow, that's very, very amazing. And you're right. There's a lot of groups out there that are making a difference, and finding the one that is your group is crucial. So I'm just looking live to see if we're live in the group, and I don't see that we are. But let's see. I don't know why we wouldn't be. It says we're live here. So I'm going to post a link here for everybody that's watching to, if they can't see us, that they can go to YouTube. But tell us what inspired you. Then it was really that one lady that inspired you to change, right? And what was it that she said that really shifted? That it sounds like you were ready to hear. You were looking for something new, right? So
Yeah,
what was it that made it? What opened you up? What was it specifically that she said?
it was about the fact that I could make such an impact with my own choices, because there was a real desire as an 18-year-old kid who wanted to see the world be better, to be impactful and to feel empowered and to feel like I could make a difference. And, it was isolating to feel the pain of the world's ills and to not feel like you could do much about it. And so here was an action that I could take every time I went to the store, every time I sat down to eat. Just with my own fork, I could save lives. And that was really powerful for me.
Wow, that is powerful. And and how many lives did she say you were saving a year?
The numbers vary, but people usually say it's about 100 a year.
Okay, well that's great. That's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's just with one's own actions, right? If you are influencing others or helping them along that journey, it's exponentially greater.
Well, that's great. And so, how did you inspire someone else to change their lifestyle? Who have you inspired, and how did that work?
Yeah, so I spent the next, the last 20 years now very active in the animal protection movement. First, I got involved through traditional advocacy routes, protesting, and that kind of thing. And as we spoke about, earlier before today, I found I had a lot of empathy, but also a lot of pain around the suffering of animals and what they were experiencing. And so I wore that as a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I had a lot of uh, very strong emotions around the suffering we were causing, and it caused me to have little empathy for other people and to be unable to understand those who had not yet made the decision I had made. And so for a while, that caused me to act in ways where I was expressing feelings about the issue in a very angry way and feeling a lot of that pain. And then I had an experience that really turned me around and helped me to become happier, become more at peace, and become more effective as an advocate. I was out handing out leaflets about the benefits of plant-based eating with a mentor of mine, a man named Josh Bach, who
Wow.
works at the Humane Society. And at the time, he was with an organization called Compassion Over Killing. And after we were done handing out leaflets, I saw a woman in a fur coat. And I said something, I can't remember the words. I probably wouldn't want to repeat them if I did, but I said something quite rude and aggressive to her. And it was very visceral as a reaction. It was something that I felt very deeply because it hurt me so much to think about the animals that had suffered for what she was wearing.
Uh huh.
But through all his compassion and wisdom, Josh came up to me afterwards. He waited until it was done. He came up to me calmly, took me aside, and he started by reaching to my heart. And he said, I really understand the pain that you're feeling and why you feel so angry about what's happening to animals. I get it. And your heart's in a good place and your feelings are very warranted. But have you ever considered if the actions you're taking when you speak to people that way are actually causing them to change their behavior the way we want them to? And my immediate reaction was to dismiss him, to think that it was, that somebody who was making such what I considered a selfish choice or a cruel choice wouldn't be possible to shift. And in my ignorance, at thinking about the fact that I hadn't always made the right decisions and still don't in all circumstances, I was very dismissive. But I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and try it one time. And so a few days later, I saw somebody else in a fur coat, and while biting my lip and holding back my true feelings, I went up to her and I said, I hope you'll consider the impact of your purchases on the animals that you're wearing, or whatever I said. I said something much more calmly and compassionately, and I walked away feeling like I had accomplished nothing. And after a minute, I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around, and this woman was standing there in tears. And she was very, very upset, not at me, but ashamed of what she was wearing. And she took off her coat and she handed it to me. She said, please take it from me. My boyfriend bought it for me, and I felt bad telling him that I didn't want it. But I realize now that wearing it is implying to other people that it's okay. I don't feel that way. Please, I can't do this anymore. Take it away from me. And I was dumbfounded. I
Wait, I lost the
realized,
sound.
oh,
But is it me?
I don't know. I can
No,
hear you.
I hear you. Go ahead. Okay.
So I was completely dumbfounded at the fact that I had been able to reach her. And it really opened up my heart and my mind to realize that the same compassion that people would have had for me over the years when they've helped me learn about something I wasn't aware of, or helped reach my heart in a way with compassion that would actually open me up and make me willing to listen, was what worked with her as well. And it changed my life.
Wow. Well, I love your story. I mean, I love the story about the fur coat. That is so amazing. I love what you said. I mean, the fact that if she hadn't come back to you, if she had gone to your car, I mean, to her car and never said anything, you would have thought you hadn't made a difference. But the truth is, we just don't know, right? And so, not to discount the our what we're our impact on the world, it's huge. So definitely beautiful. So um, that's very important to always know that we are making a difference just by being alive. So tell me about the what you were talking about, how you kind of shifted through using punk music to veganism.
Yeah, so growing up, I was very into the punk music scene and into the messages that were in a lot of those songs. Not all. There are a lot of different political messages in punk music, but there's certainly a scene within that world that is very outspoken about different social justice issues, including about animals. And so I was touched by that music and impacted by it. It didn't lend me to be calm and compassionate like I would learn to be later, but it did awaken me to the ills of the world that I wanted to solve. But it was that moment with Josh that really changed my life. And your point about how important it is that we take a moment to appreciate the impact we're having, I think is so important. I remember years later, I was at a conference, an animal protection conference, and there was a woman she lived in a remote area and she was crying and she was saying that she felt so guilty that she didn't feel she'd ever been able to convince somebody to change their diet or their behavior based on her actions. And she felt like she wasn't making a difference. And another young woman came up to her and she said, I don't know if you remember me, but many years ago, you met me on the street and you gave me this piece of paper. And ever since I've had this job working in the movement and I've influenced my family and these people. And the woman just was so uplifted by those words, realizing that she had actually made a difference. We never know. To this day, I get messages from people I went to high school or college with, or who I knew from completely unconnected issues, who say to me, I don't know if you know, but you changed my life. I've changed my diet. I'm vegan now, or I'm doing this now because of the words you told me. So, or just from seeing your posts or whatever it may be. So that's really powerful. And I think we need to, while the issues that we're facing are so grandiose, so big, so overwhelming, we need to remember that the impacts that we're having are equally powerful. For every animal we're saving, for every, pound of greenhouse gas emissions we're removing from the air, and for every day we prevent our own heart attacks and spend more time with our families, we're making a difference. And we need to take those victories and celebrate them.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, even if we just saved one life, my gosh, I mean, that's huge. One life is huge, and we're saving multiple lives year after year after year. So there's a lot to celebrate, you know? And I think it's when that we don't celebrate enough, like you're saying, take the time to really be thankful that we got the lesson, because here we are in society that's just really hammering us with the idea that we have to eat meat, that we're not going to be healthy, we're not going to make it. So, and that's not true. But it's really hard to break out of those beliefs that are just really so ingrained, and also the family um, eating, the religious cultural systems that are set into place, and the dynamics with family. And I know it wasn't very easy for me to tell my parents. I mean, I told them this is the way I'm choosing, and they thought I was crazy, right? I mean, luckily they were loving, but I mean, I see a lot of disharmony in the family unit. So, what about your parents? Are they vegan?
They're not. They're very supportive, and they've always been very proud of the work I've done. My mother is mostly vegetarian, and she's certainly. They all have been very supportive of the work I've done, though, and they've seen the impact I've had, and they've seen that I've pursued my dreams to be able to make this into my career and to make a difference. And so, they're proud of that, and I'm grateful to them for it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And you live, I mean, you're able to live in harmony, right? Without judgment. Did you always, I mean, were you able to do that in the beginning? Let's just say when you switched so good, that's wonderful. You never had that anger towards them.
No, they were always supportive. They didn't quite get it, but they were always supportive and created space for it and supported me and, making my own decisions. When they were bad decisions, they, tried to, show me the way, but also respected that I was going to find my way. And, a lot of my career was about discovery. And a lot of where I got today is based on trial and error and trying to see where I could go. My entire career has been based really on how I can have the greatest impact. And it took a lot of different steps and twists and turns to find my way to where I am now. But I'm grateful because I love what I do every single day.
Well, it sounds like you're very peaceful in your soul. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about your parents and the word respect, right? They respected you and you respected them, because I think that's when we get into these sticky situations that we're not respecting, that we're forcing, like, and that we can't live unless they live like we do. But that's the key, right? Mutual respect and allowing that people are on their own path and they have to make the right decisions for themselves, right, to live at night. And if they're not ready to allow for that and to create space. So, like you said, that's beautiful. Um, that's a true blessing. And well, there was another thing I wanted to ask you about. You were talking about effective altruism. Can you
Mhm.
expand on that? Because I would love to hear more about that.
Sure. So effective altruism is a philosophical movement that grew out of the utilitarian movement. You all might have heard of Peter Singer, the who's considered the father of the modern animal rights movement, from his 1975 book Animal Liberation. And you know, utilitarianism is about being able to measure good versus bad and be able to choose things based on that. Effective altruism takes it one step further and talks specifically about how we can choose what careers we take and how we spend our time based on maximizing impact. And it's not always in ways that are obvious. So when I graduated from school, I wanted to work to protect farm animals. And the only way I knew how to do that was to go work for farm animal protection organizations, which was a blessing, right? I got to do some amazing things, got to work with some real heroes. And I'm very proud of the work I got to do and the people I got to, learn from. But I wasn't necessarily being as effective as I could have, because at the time there were maybe a dozen jobs in the country of people who were doing advocacy work full time, specifically for farm animal protection. I was privileged to have one of those roles, but I realized there were so many others who wanted those jobs, and my being there wasn't the reason that work was being done. I knew I didn't want to leave this cause, but I wondered if there were other ways I could open up those roles and find other ways to expand impact. Because so many people I knew would apply for jobs like mine, not get them, and leave the movement because they felt like they didn't have a place. And I also started wondering if people's behavior was going to change solely based on the advocacy I was doing. I believe it was very powerful, and I still think that education and advocacy are incredibly important to raise issues, open people's hearts and minds. But I also started thinking about what caused most people to make different choices in their lives. And I realized that so often choices are made not just based on good intentions, but also based on access, based on understanding, based on ability, and based on desire. And so I started thinking about, when speaking to people who didn't choose to change their behavior based on my conversations with them, I would ask them why. And I started researching what it was that prevented people from making those switches. And it was often about lack of knowledge, but also fearing that they would have to sacrifice, feeling losing connection to their communities because of what they were used to eating, fearing being unhealthy, fearing not having delicious food and not knowing where to find it. And so I thought, there's something about making the solution seem more attractive that might be just as important as making the problem known. And somebody needed to work to say, I know that you want to make the shift. If I make it easier for you, let me do that for you. Let me show you how delicious it can be, how fun it can be, how great these products are that you can embrace, so that you're not sacrificing by shutting off a piece of your diet or a piece of your eating opportunity. You're actually expanding it to try new things and to enjoy new components. And that's why I decided to go into business, to help plant-based food companies be more effective at marketing and selling their goods.
Well, that makes so much sense. And that is so important, is to hear what's stopping, what's stopping people from opening up to that. And then I love what you're saying, because I mean, in this whole conversation, it's about that connection, relationships, where your mentor really spoke from his heart, and that's what shifted things. You were able to open up when his name was Josh, right? Josh spoke from his heart to you and acknowledged you. So he acknowledged your gifts and your compassion. And so when people listen to other people, like if people say, "Oh, well, it's hard to be vegan," and not in I hear a lot of people saying, "No, it's not. It's real lazy," and then that's not hearing and not being compassionate. So when we're speaking from our heart, we really want to hear and understand. How can I serve you? And that sounds like exactly what you're doing. How can I serve you? To, I mean, not that you have any investment in it, but just coming from a place of being a teacher and a kind teacher, not someone that's bullying or shaming, stepping away from that shaming, because that's what is so toxic. And that's what makes this, I mean, it's in such in a goodness, in the area of goodness, of compassionate heart and understanding. That's what real relationships are built on. And in order to influence people, and this isn't as in a manipulative way, but in order to have an influence, we've got to have a connection. We've got to build a rapport with someone, and that's what you're doing here. And so I want to hear more about Mission Plant.
Sure.
And everybody that's watching, please, if you have any questions, comments, please put them in the chat. Please give StreamYard permission to use your name. So go ahead and tell us more about your journey with Mission Plant and all your companies.
Sure. So Mission Plant is my company with which I work in the plant-based and alternative protein world, and I have several parts to it. First, I do consulting, and my specialty is helping plant-based and alternative protein food companies with the strategy for their businesses. So how to launch their products and businesses, how to enter the market, how to decide what products to sell, their branding, their marketing, their sales strategy, whether to sell to restaurants or stores or directly to consumers online or all those kinds of things. And so I'm a strategy consultant. And my specialty these days is helping companies outside of the US enter the US market. You know, for a lot of people who are starting companies in countries where they have really great innovation and maybe even a lot of access to capital, but they don't necessarily have a big market to sell in. So a lot of my clients are from Eastern Europe or from Israel, where the countries are small and the population to sell to may not be that big, but they've developed something really, really great that deserves to be out there. And they recognize that the US is a very promising market to be able to enter. It's also very complex. And so, you know, it's such a large country physically, and distribution of food is very complex. Getting the attention of retailers or restaurants and distributors is very hard. So working with somebody like myself and my team, people can understand how to do that more effectively and efficiently, and we can help them to map that path and launch effectively. So that's what I'm working on these days as a consultant. In addition, I'm an angel investor. And so I invest in plant-based food companies, only in packaged food companies right now, not in restaurants or anything, even though I support them. And I invest in those companies very, very early. So at the seed level when they're just starting out. So I don't have huge checks, so I can't be, you know, an investor putting in millions of dollars that will help a company, you know, scale in a very large way, but helping them get off the ground. So I do that as well. And lastly, there are a few areas that I've spent now the last 12 years in the plant-based business world. And there are a few areas that I realized were challenges for a lot of businesses. And so partnering with others, I've founded two companies to help solve for that. I don't run these companies day to day, my partners do, but I've helped them to get off the ground. The first is a company called Moonshot Collaborative, which is a consumer research business where we interview and survey thousands of people who buy plant-based products, not just vegans and vegetarians, in fact, mostly flexitarians. And we ask them what they think of new product ideas, branding, what they would pay for products on behalf of companies who want to be more effective and thoughtful about how they sell their products. And the second company, that company's been up since Moonshot Collaborative was launched in November 2020 and is live and kicking. And the second company is called plantbelly.com. And it's an online store for curated plant-based foods. Anyone in the US can order off the website and have products delivered right to their house. And so that's been around since November 2021 and is a lot of fun. So I'm privileged to work with great people on those two companies. and hope that that's a way to expand opportunities for companies to make smarter decisions with the research, and also to access consumers with their products through the sales online.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. And so you really know what's going on. I mean, I mean, you can see that how things are moving forward, because a lot of people feel hopeless and they're really sad and depressed, like they're not making a difference. But the world really is shifting. Can you talk about that? I mean, what you've seen in this industry to give us
Sure.
some hope for the people that need it?
Yeah, I mean, the growth in this market is tremendous. I mean, to put it in perspective, 15, 20 years ago, soy milk has been around since the Ming Dynasty for thousands of years. And yet, up until 20 years ago, non-dairy milks were still only about 1% of all milk sold in the US. But today they're over 15%. So 15% of all milk sold here is non-dairy, and the sales of non-dairy milks are going down, of dairy milks are going down, but the sales of dairy alternatives and plant-based meat products and everything else are skyrocketing. And a big part of it has to do with all of the people who are recognizing that it's not just going 100% vegan that makes a difference. Even changing your diet just a little bit by trying these products and maybe going meatless Mondays or something can have a huge impact. So we're seeing huge growth in the industry because of that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I see that Angela's here and Trisha, and I know that Trisha probably is, I mean, is really they both are interested in this, but I mean, Trisha's doing her daycare, running a business, and then introducing the vegan foods to her daycare.
Nice.
So,
That's great.
I mean, everyone's having an impact in their own way, and Angela's showing the benefits of, I mean, healthy vegan living. I mean, she's an example of a prospering body, this wonderful physical body that's just maximized by whole plant foods. So that's great. Yeah. So, and I love what you're saying. I mean, the jump from 1% to 15% of the non-dairy milk, which is amazing. So I mean, it's opening up to, like, I'm sure that Trisha can tell us about in her daycare, about the people opening up to opening up the idea to people who haven't even thought about it before, right? I mean, what would you say if you were in a daycare and then you were presenting that to the families that were coming in, that the vegan food is served in this daycare? How would you handle that?
I think that it's becoming easier because people are more open-minded and recognizing that we do have to start thinking about how we're eating and what impact it has on ourselves and on the world. But certainly it's about, if there are questions or concerns, it's about educating people compassionately and showing them how there are so many millions of people who are thriving this way. And the fact is that for millennia, many parts of the world ate primarily plant-based diets all the time, because animal products were rare, expensive, or difficult to acquire. And so eating plant-based is not only safe and healthy for all ages, but it's something that has been done forever. The American Dietetic Association, which is the largest professional group of nutritionists and dietitians in the world, has explicitly said they believe that vegan diets are safe for every single stage of life, from from in the womb and lactation all the way up to geriatric years, and even for athletes and others with various situations. And so they believe that it's not only safe and healthy, but actually they have shown that it has, on average, people who eat a plant-based diet have lower rates of ischemic heart disease, of type 2 diabetes, and of certain kinds of cancers. And so I think that helping parents who are concerned about their kids being introduced to these foods understand, first of all, hopefully we're all eating fruits and vegetables and other plant-based foods regularly. So it's not like we're feeding, completely novel things, but also it's about recognizing that, not only are these things okay, but they're actually really healthy.
Well,
And
that's a great answer. Go ahead.
and with the youngest people that we help introduce foods to help set up their patterns for life. So I'm very fortunate that I grew up in a home where we ate home cooked meals every day, and where health was center plate, literally and figuratively. And so I grew up understanding that fruits and vegetables were a huge part of the diet. Whether or not I was vegan, I would have always had that present. And so introducing young people that what they should be eating is not necessarily peanut butter and jelly with the crust cut off, but is actually, something that brings all of those macronutrients they need to the forefront is really valuable.
Yeah, that's what's so amazing, right? That you just hit the nail on the head with the peanut butter and jelly white bread, and what's the nutritional value there? But that's what we were taught that children should eat, and cookies and snack, and milk, whole milk for the snack. And so people are clinging to that belief because that's what they've been taught all year after year after year, right? And so, but actually the real truth is all these whole foods and the fruits and the vegetables are the ones that are really going to stimulate these children's brains and
Mhm.
give them the energy, because when we're stuck on those sugar diets and just junk, the children aren't getting the nutrients. And I have some in my family that are just very sluggish, and they're eating all junk all day long, and I have to keep my mouth shut because the more I speak out, the worse it gets. I can't tell my family member, well, I mean, they know how I eat, and they don't like it, the certain family member. And I have to stop because it's just going to make her so resistant to
Mhm.
ever opening up to the newness of change, right? But I feel horrible for these children that aren't getting the nutrients that they need to get. And I can see it in the tiredness, the no vitality, right? Just sluggishness.
Mhm.
So introducing this kind of diet is just has such a great impact, and that's what Trish is doing. And she's saying, I just hired vegan business coach Trevor Benjery to help start my business, to help other child care providers around the nation implement plant-based programs, and then helping vegan plant-based families find these providers. So exciting. I mean, my gosh. And she's a new vegan. Very new. So
That's amazing.
it is amazing the impact she's having. And I really celebrate you all. And it's beautiful when we can come together. So we're not stuck in that isolation and feeling like we're not making a difference. We're all making a huge difference. And that's what we were talking about earlier. So let us know if you have any questions. Um, but now, you have kids, David, don't
I have
you?
a son who's turning 7 in 3 weeks, and
Oh,
he's been vegan since before he was born. And he's a happy, healthy kid. He's got a lot of energy. He loves to learn. He loves to eat. He loves to play. And some of his favorite foods are those that most kids wouldn't think of. He loves broccoli. He loves fruit, and that's just what he grew up with, and so that's what he craves. And I'm thrilled.
that makes so much sense what you said right there, because he's eating it and that's what his body wants. So if
Mhm.
we're eating junk, then our bodies, it's addictive, right? The junk. And so a lot of people don't understand that. They say they might feel worse when they're trying to get off the junk. It's because you're like your body's detoxing, and it's not normal to eat Cheetos and junk all day long. But I love that. What about, how does he feel? I mean, about other children? Are you living in a progressive area? Are you in New York, or where are you?
I am. I live in Brooklyn, so it's a quite a progressive area, and so he hasn't faced any challenges with that, and the school's been supportive, and there are certainly other vegetarian kids in his class, and he understands why we're vegetarian, and he speaks about it in a compassionate way. But yeah, he has told other kids that he doesn't eat certain things, and because he loves animals. I never introduced him to the cruelty aspect in a really deep sense, but I never shied. I never wanted to terrorize him. But I did introduce him at a very young age to the idea that animals are our friends and that we don't eat them. And I took him to farm animal sanctuaries so that he could see how lovely pigs and chickens and goats and sheep and all are. And I think that really he has an absolute adoration for animals. And he's very proud to be somebody who is making that choice. And so he's not a judgmental kid, but he's not shy about explaining, that he chooses to act that way also.
Well, that's interesting. Yes, I love that. And I'm sure that's very easy to connect with a little child, because, I mean, they're so pure and it's natural to love animals. So, when would you, let's just say he's growing up, would there ever be a point that you would show him a different, more, I mean, I guess he wouldn't need to see the videos. I mean, the cruelty. But would there be a point where you introduced more, and what age would you think about that? Would that be?
I think he's gonna. I think. I mean, if he ever asks, I can certainly explain to him. I think he's gonna come into those things just by nature of where he is. I mean, he is. You know, I am full time working in this field. He knows that my job is all about helping to spread vegan foods. We go to animal protection, galas and benefits and nonprofit events, um, and he knows that animals are our friends and they're being eaten. And he knows that we don't wear them and use things that we're testing them and stuff. So I think he understands at the fundamental level. And by being exposed to that, I think as he gets older, he will naturally learn some of those other factors. And as he becomes more inquisitive, he'll probably start to ask more about how animals get to our plate and those kinds of things. So I think that'll happen naturally, and I'm going to let that unfold, naturally. I mean, I was probably 12 when I really started becoming passionate about different issues of suffering in the world. In middle school, I started reading all kinds of books about the Holocaust, which was obviously very upsetting, but I really wanted to understand. And so I think there'll be a time when he'll certainly ask more questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. But I feel like that'll unfold. He knows in his heart, and he knows at the core that, just the fact that animals are sentient is enough to say that we don't harm them. And that's a great foundation. And everything else is, extra. If he wants to know it, he can know it.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense just to let it unfold on its own, right? The path, the journey. And I love that he's a great representation. And so you're saying that in New York that it's easier. How many children do you think are vegetarian vegan in the schools? I mean, like in his class, would you say?
um, I'd say probably 10% or more are vegetarian or vegan in his school. I don't have exact numbers, but
Hmm.
that would sound about right. So it's definitely higher than the national average. About 5 or 6% of the population is vegetarian, and about 1 to 1.5 of the population is vegan. But what's interesting is that many, 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 many more are on that journey. And so almost 20% of the population eats more than half their meals vegetarian, and over 40% wants to reduce how much animal protein they're consuming. So when you add that all up, we really have 50 or 60% of the population that is engaged in this issue and making conscious eating decisions around the animal welfare, environmental, and health impacts of eating more plant-based. And so the issue has much greater reach than we might realize. In fact, in my industry, I know that if we relied or only succeeded in selling to vegetarians or vegans, we would not have real business opportunities, and we wouldn't be having much impact, right? I tell people my goal is to not get you to switch from one plant-based burger to another. That's not a big economic opportunity, and it's certainly not making much impact on the world. So making these foods available and desirable to the rest of the world is really what I aim to do.
Yes, you're right, because that is a big block. People think, oh, it's hard to eat like that, all right? When they see all the choices that we have today, they're able to, even if they start out, let's just say the Impossible Burgers, the way they start, and then, I mean, however they get there, and then they learn more about whole foods and all the exquisite new recipes that come when you are living a plant-based life. Now there's so many healthy, clean ways to eat, and then you already are in that kind of area where you can learn more. Let's just say your family member has heart disease, and I see that Dr. Akil Teher is here, and he wrote that book Open Heart, and his amazing journey, um, from heart disease and open heart surgery to hiking in the, was it the Himalayas? Yeah, so he's right there, a great example. So once we get into the plant-based world, however we get into it, then we have the resources to learn more about how we can up our health, how we can make the change to live a vital, thriving life, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're watching, Dr. Teher.
Thank you for being here. And
Yes,
I
and
think Trisha has a question for us.
okay.
David, how do you feel about the subsidy system in the schools? I'm in Parker, Colorado, and I'm currently working on a petition with the caretaker on this issue because I have to take a form to my doctor's pediatrician to be for medical reason. You had to bring a form to your daughter's pediatrician to get. medical justification as to why she can't eat meat or dairy. That is so ridiculous and offensive. I'm glad your doctor thought so too. Uh, yeah, that is ridiculous. Even on the basis of the most fundamental religious freedoms that come from the First Amendment, the fact is that many people are choosing to eat plant-based for faith, if nothing else, and that alone should, be protecting our children's rights to access healthy, proper food. So I'm very sorry you went through that. To your point about the policymakers and how entrenched the big animal farming industries are in the policymakers' pockets, it's a really big issue. You know, I always tell people that we know the system is problematic when we're the only country in the world that has a government agency that is responsible both for regulating and promoting the same industry. So the USDA is supposed to ensure that that factory farms are safe for people and that the animals aren't being treated a certain way and that the food is safe. So they're regulating those same farms, and they're also regulating diets, right? They put out the dietary guidelines, which sometimes come with recommendations that we cut down on things like high fat cheese. The same exact year, about 15 years ago, the same exact year, just a month after the USDA dietary guidelines came out saying eat less high fat cheese, the USDA worked with, I can't remember if it was Domino's or Pizza Hut, to launch their cheesy crust pizza because it would increase consumption of cheese, which they were trying to sell more of. It's ridiculous. It's very, very disturbing. I think that, I understand how that can become really upsetting and cause us to be frozen in place when we realize how uphill battle it is. But I think that we're winning when we lead by example, and we're winning when we have one-on-one trusted and compassionate, respectful connections with people, showing them how healthy and vibrant and thriving we are, and introducing them to animals and to others who are like, who are doing this. I think is the biggest impact. I think the policymakers will shift as the world does. Unfortunately, it should be the opposite. But I think policy work is extremely important, but I think we have to recognize that it's a very slow process, and sometimes working in other sectors can be easier. So the work that I'm privileged to do with so many others in the plant-based food industry is really helping to open up people's minds to how delicious and fun it can be to eat this way. And I think the world is changing in industry and in the public diet more quickly than it is in policy, but eventually policy will catch up.
Yes, you're right. I mean, it is a slow process, and we have to. That's why I'm glad that you're pointing out how things have shifted over time, right? And we are here to make a difference for the next generation. And you're raising, and Trisha's raising her little ones, right, to be the change makers. They're growing up in it. So we're doing our part. They're taking over when we're gone. Their children will take over, right? And hopefully that at some point things will shift, so we don't, this isn't even an issue where the meat eaters are such a tiny percentage. It'll switch back the other way. And this will be the norm of the whole food plant-based living, clean living, where, and just think about that, if people were whole food plant-based, I mean, how much energy they would have, and how many more years they would be living, and just the thriving would be going up, right? And feeling more at peace with yourself, because when we're living like this, we're not harming others, right? We're really being respectful to ourselves and for others. And that's what's really important. Like you were talking about, the good vegan is the respectful vegan, the one that listens and wants to understand. Why is it, I mean, like, what makes it hard, and how can I help you? And if you're not ready to change, that's okay. I'm here for you when you are. No pressure, no nothing, no judgment. You're not a bad person, right? You're a person on the path that I was on for years, when I thought vegetarianism was a joke. I mean, someone was saying yesterday about, well, they were just calling people blankety blanks, and I was one of the blankety blanks, and I don't think I was a blankety blank. What I think it was a person with a good heart that didn't understand that it wasn't ready, and that's the way, to look at it, through compassion, because compassion is what is going to change lives. Take the ego out of it. Take the, they don't like me, or they, they're not listening to me. That's the ego talking. That, and take that out of it and try to understand, go into the conversation just understanding. I'm here to understand and listen and to be supportive however I can be, and if it's not the right time, to let it go, you know. And I think you were saying you let that go. And um how many years did it take kind of for you to be at peace in your journey?
Um, Not that long. I think that finding my way in my career took longer. Really, that experience with Josh actually was quite paradigm shifting for me and really opened me up. And from then on, my focus was not only being more compassionate, but also always with an eye towards impact. It was, is this the most effective thing I could be doing? No. Okay, what else could I be doing that's going to be more effective? And so every decision I made from then on was about that. It was about maximizing impact. And, when it comes to how we do that in our personal relationships, I find that when I was constantly trying to tell people how to change or constantly on them about things, they would get very resistant. But when I backed off and decided to focus on myself and those that were more open, the ones that I thought were closed came around and would come to me and say, "Oh, I just found this article. I just learned this thing. Did you know this?" And I'm sitting there scratching my head thinking, "I told you that 50 times, but you know what? That's what it took to open you up, then great, giving you the space to discover it yourself."
That's it. That's what you said. And what you said was it. They, when they come to the idea on their own, is that's when it shifts things, right? Not when we hand them the idea, but when they open up to it and they discover it, then they're ready, right? And I love what Trisha says here. She is saying, my daughter loves when kids ask her about her special lunch because it gives her an opportunity to plant seeds. Yes, that's so true.
I
And
had
what do
one
you,
parent say to me the other day
uh-huh.
that they were upset because my son had told her daughter came home and said she didn't want to drink milk because my son had told her that he doesn't drink milk because of animals. And she was upset about it. And I said, "Well, did he tell her she shouldn't drink the milk?" And she asked her daughter. Her daughter said, "No, he just told me he doesn't because he doesn't want to hurt cows. And so I decided I didn't want to either." And I'm like, he didn't do anything wrong there. He explained his motivation and his compassion and his decision. He never even said you shouldn't or it's wrong to. He said, "This is the choice I've made." And somebody else was touched by that, but it was threatening or uncomfortable for her mother to hear that. But I tried to be respectful and understanding of her situation and why it was scary for her because she's not necessarily aware of, in her experience, people drink milk. But I also was like, I don't think it's wrong for him to say what choices he makes for himself without any judgment. The same way that somebody could say, "I choose to go to church," and you may not, and that doesn't make, I don't think there's anything wrong in sharing one's own feelings in a compassionate way.
Definitely. And I love that he's able to say that without judging, and being just in a loving space. That's beautiful. And the way that he's going to take that into each age of his life,
Mhm.
that's a great foundation of just sharing and not feeling scared to share, that confidence as a little boy. That's a beautiful gift,
Mhm.
that there's nothing that, however, whatever the person says is okay. If they don't want to drink it or they do want to drink it, your little son's not going to be upset.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm very proud of him.
Huh?
I'm very proud of him.
Yes. Well, I'm proud of him too. Tell him I am. And I'm really want to talk to Josh, your mentor. We should get him on this show. You know?
Josh is amazing. He has influenced so many millions of people. He's spent years now at the Humane Society. He was also the co-founder of Just, the plant-based egg company, and so he has really been impactful. And I know so many people who say that he was the one who opened them up to this issue or to approaching it in a more effective and compassionate way, just like me. So I'm so grateful for him.
Yes. It sounds like he's really had an impact on the world too. Um, Sorry if you heard my dogs. I'm pet
They're
sitting. I mean, I'm,
perfect.
I'm watching my friend's dog. Anyway, what's Trisha saying? She was upset because someone shifted her child's blinders. I work at Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I see parents shielding their children's eyes from the truth all the time. This is the issue with society.
I think people are scared about things they don't understand or don't know, and it's important to uh, raise the awareness and make them aware, and also recognize that we have to think about how we can have that conversation to open them up, or to uh, give them resources for when they're ready to open up.
Yeah, that is true. And see that the parents, they just don't understand, like you said, right? They're doing what they think is right for their children.
Yeah.
So,
What we're seeing now is so often it's children that are shifting their parents' perspectives. I know many, many, many people now who are going plant based or who have become active because their children did. In fact, there's a very passionate and wonderful family. The Froman Anderson and his parents, they've become very active investors in the plant-based industry, and they started a plant-based marketplace in Rhode Island, all because the son became aware of these issues and decided to dedicate his life to it, and his parents learned about it from him. And now all three of them are doing so much good in the world, investing in fantastic companies, spreading food through their own businesses. And so I'm seeing that more often, where people are opening their minds because their children are the ones who do so. Because as you said, for children, compassion is the starting place. They don't have the knowledge or reason to feel fear or scared yet, because they haven't been damaged by the world. Fortunately, they won't be too deeply. And it's for us to recognize that they can teach us something, because we don't want to become so hardened that we stop believing in the impact we can have, or the importance of contributing to our communities and to the world.
definitely, you're right that the children are making shifts. And I think it's beautiful because as children, we're taught that animals are living beings. But as we grow up, we're taught that these animals, certain animals are things, right? Dogs and cats are still living beings with
Mm-hmm.
feelings, but then the cows and chickens, they're just things and disposable, right? So that's the shift that I'm trying to make, is help people understand that these are not things, they're not disposable objects,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how to go about that in the right manner, of presenting that, and with delicacy and gracefulness
Mm-hmm.
is what we're talking about here.
I think
So
two great tools to do that. One is humane education, so supporting these teachers who are going into schools to teach age appropriate, these issues in an age appropriate way. And one thing that I really love is that humane education is rooted not only in teaching compassion, but also in teaching critical thinking. And I really appreciate that it's presenting opportunities for people to learn about issues, but also encouraging them to engage with them in their own way, and to have feel agency in that engagement. So I love humane education as one tool, especially with young people. And the other thing I think is visiting farm animal sanctuaries. Another big piece of my finding compassion and peace and moving away from anger and towards compassion was getting to work for an organization called Farm Sanctuary, where I was privileged to work for 4 years before I started my first business. And what really inspired me there was, when we think of the inane number of animals who are suffering or dying every year, it's really it's upsetting, it's isolating, and it can cause us to feel helpless. But then when you go and you meet one of these animals at one of these sanctuaries, and you see how happy they are, and how at peace they are, and how safe they are, and how loved they are, and what it's like for them, that they get to be with their friends and taken care of and loved, you start to appreciate how every one of our actions is making an impact, right? Like you said, just saving one life is impactful. And when you meet these pigs or these chickens or these cows or whoever it may be, it really reminds you of that. And I find it to be an incredibly uplifting experience. So I highly recommend that anybody who has the chance to goes to visit a farm animal sanctuary. I think it's a great way to connect with animals and to celebrate the impact of our actions. And it's a great way to open people up if they haven't made that connection yet, for somebody who isn't aware. When they meet one of these animals and they look in their eyes and they realize that they have the same behaviors as their dogs or cats, it also shifts their minds.
well, that's a great idea, like for a birthday party, or I mean, at any age. At first, I was going to say a children's birthday party, but that'd be a great idea for me to have a birthday party. Let's go to a farm sanctuary. Well, Okay. I'm on it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I know people who've gotten married at farm animal sanctuaries and have had a lot of wonderful experiences, and it's a privilege to do so.
That's a shift, definitely. Well, you're giving us a lot of great information and ideas, and we're going to wrap this up. But I want you to tell me what any final thoughts, about, and I want you to make sure to post about Mission Plant where everybody can get a hold of you to find out more, so we can, really help each other out, join in community to
Sure.
you know. So, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us on your vegan journey?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the important work you're doing to support people on their journeys, and to all of your guests for all the wonderful work they're doing. If people want to find me, the easiest way is on LinkedIn, or at my email, david@missionplant.com. Love for you to check out my various businesses. If you're looking for some great gifts, Plant Belly has amazing gifting bundles of delicious products, so please check it out. And I think I want to encourage everybody to recognize that they have so much agency and they can be so empowered in their personal choices and in their careers. So if you feel lost, you shouldn't. The skills that you have are applicable to helping. And so often people think, oh, well, I'm not cut out for this, therefore I can't do this. Oh, I don't feel comfortable, going to protest. It's not really me, so I can't do anything. And that's not the case. Every one of us can contribute in our own way. There's one of the philosophies of effective altruism is called earning to give, and it's the idea that, look, if you're a really amazing math wizard, maybe becoming an actuary or stockbroker, but then taking the money you earn and donating to a nonprofit to hire 10 or 15 people that could have the roles that you would have had as one person, maybe as or more impactful. So don't ever doubt the ability to make a difference. Reach out to your nonprofit organizations in the movement, reach out to businesses and find out how you can help them spread the delicious food and the good word. And, thank you. It's the most important thing. I appreciate what you're doing.
Yes, and you're exactly right. We all have our own unique contribution to make to this movement. And look at this. Trisha's saying children are the answer. My daughter is starting a YouTube channel called Young Voices for Animal Hope to bring a general awareness to her peers on the agricultural industry, and also fun and easy ways to go plant-based.
Love
And we
it.
go to animal sanctuaries. I record her talking about the animals and their stories so she can use this on the channel so other kids can see it.
Absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful.
That is, it's amazing. Okay, so I'm celebrating all of us. I'm very excited. I want to go scream it to the neighborhood, and they would say, "Who is this kook screaming out?" So I might just tone it down a little bit, but I will go spread this joy that you all have given me, and I'm celebrating all of you. And thank you so much, David, for this great wisdom, and it's been an honor.
Thank you so much for having me. Likewise.
All right, y'all. We will see you next week, and everyone have a beautiful day. Bye.